Hello, my name is Dre. I'm a customer success engineer here at Moveworks. I'll be our host for today's Creator Studio weekly webinar session. This week, we're going to discuss Ariba purchase requisition approvals. Excuse me, tripping over my words this morning. Next week, we'll discuss SailPoint IIQ access request approvals. And then the first session for October will be manage engine ticket approvals. So very exciting there. But again, today we're going to be discussing Ariba purchase requisition approvals. And then finally, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So please hold your questions or ask them in the Q&A functionality of the Zoom chat, and we will get to them as soon as we can. I'll make sure to leave ample time for that conversation. Now, again, of course, today we're discussing Ariba purchase requisition approvals. So the first thing I want to do is sort of show the general user experience that we are looking to build. I'm also going to talk about some alternative ways that you might be able to build out this user experience. So I'm going to show just one sort of very simple version of things, and then we can talk around because of what APIs are available through SAP Ariba, the different ways that you might be able to build this out. So at a high level, very simply, this is going to be a queries use case for the version that I first want to talk about for this use case. So we have the user Glenn coming to the bot and saying, do I have any pending Ariba PR approvals? This is a very similar kind of user utterance that you might have with our out-of-the-box approval skill, of which, by the way, there is an Ariba native functionality that we offer. So you don't have to build this using Creator Studio, but using Creator Studio does give you some more flexibility. But again, I just kind of want to start by building this kind of similarly to how you would expect it if you've used Moveworks approvals before. So the user comes to the bot, says, do I have any pending Ariba PR approvals? That's going to trigger our queries use case, which will in turn trigger the get API for the pending approvals. So get, and then the pending approvals API from Ariba. That'll then return a list of pending Ariba purchase requisition approvals that you can then navigate through. So you can, expand one of these approvals and get more information about it. You could potentially approve it. We'll talk about that in a moment. A couple of different things that you can do. So before we move on, again, the architecture diagram that we're going to share is going to be along this sort of queries path. I do want to call out, though, that you could do a proactive approval notification. So what that would look like, instead of having the user come to the bot, would be maybe a new approval is filed, then automatically send the approver a notification that they need to approve or deny, they need to action that approval. So let's look at the architecture and process diagram. So in this case, because we're using a queries use case, again, the user is going to come to the bot. They're going to ask that question that we had before or something similar. And that's going to trigger our first queries use case. And so the screenshot from before is sort of this first half. So you're going to go ahead and call get this pending approvables, excuse me, API call. That's going to pull that from the approvals table in SAP Ariba. And then it's going to return what data is available to that end user. The follow-up action here would be in the case where you want to enable the user to actually approve the approvable. So two thoughts here. One is oftentimes or occasionally you'll find that there are security concerns. I don't think that it's necessary to worry about this, to be honest, but it does come up. So I wanted to call this out that when the approvable comes back, it actually contains a URL for the approvable, and you can just present that as a link. So that would be one option for basically allowing your end users to then go from the approvable within chat to, navigating to Ariba, the Ariba service portal, in case you have actions that need to be done in the service portal. Alternatively, and this is what I would probably recommend, would be building a follow-up action using query triggered paths that calls this API, this API for requisitions, in this case, requisitions for requisition approval, passes the approvable ID, and it's a patch API call. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like very briefly in Postman. I'll stop sharing, and I will navigate to Postman. Okay. So the first call, of course, that needs to be made is this authorization API call, this get access token. I'm not going to go into this super deeply unless somebody wants to talk about it during the Q&A session. But this maybe we'll do another session at some point about building an Ariba connector. Your connector is going to handle this. So once your connector is built in Creator Studio, you'll simply select it when you're building your use case, and then this authentication step is taken care of. The next step is this get pending approvable API call. So of course the API is going to be structured with some base URL that's going to point to your specific Ariba instance, an environment flag. In production, this is probably something like prod. And then an Ariba realm is going to allow us to basically search more specifically for pending approvals. You'll notice though that there are options for additional filters. So you can filter based on things like approver name. You could filter based on the unique name if you wanted to build a use case to allow a user to query a specific approvable, perhaps. Different ways that you might be able to do that. And then you would structure that using the query variable that we offer in queries. So once you get back your list of approvables, you then have to either approve or deny. So the approve API call, again, is going to be this patch API call method. You're going to point towards that specific approvable ID, and then you can add some query parameters for maybe additional information that you want to pass as well. The request body is where the approve or deny action actually takes place. So in this case, we're going to pass a state. Maybe we want to pass a comment. That's optional. If you want to build your use case to leverage that, perhaps you could do that through, again, a query triggered path. Really the same kind of thing that we've already been discussing. And then for the deny action, again, we can go to the body and see that the state, well, this should say deny, but I think the gist is there. I think the understanding is there. So that is the API flow. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing and I'll go back to my slides. I'll share that here. All right. So the next thing I wanted to share was, well, before we get to that point, I want to share a demo. So actually, let me stop sharing again. Go to just share my desktop to make this a little easier. So we can ask, let's go ahead and ask our query briefly. And go back to Slack. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and ask, what approvals do I have pending in Ariba? This is just to sort of show what that use case looks like again. We're going to go ahead and call our Ariba purchase requisition approvals, and it'll return back the data that it has queried. So in this case, those are going to be a list of PR approvals that are pending my end user. Okay. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to some follow-up resources very quickly that you might want to leverage for, building your own use cases, onboarding to Creator Studio. There's a number of resources that we can share for that, and then we'll move on to the Q&A session. So just bear with me for a moment more. The first resource I wanted to share is our Creator Studio Developer Certification course on the Moveworks Academy portal. There you'll find a series of guided training modules that walk you through sort of key concepts of Creator Studio, as well as step-by-step guides that you can follow along with, and you'll build some example use cases just to get you some baseline experience in paths, queries, and events. Finally, at the end of that course, there is a multiple choice exam that can provide you a certification. Shareable on LinkedIn. It just shows that your capability with Creator Studio is up to Moveworks par, if you'd like to call it that. Finally is our documentation and developer community. Our documentation portal you can think of as our primary reference material for all things Moveworks, be that our events API, be that building use cases using tutorials and guides like our use case diagrams and use case guides. Highly recommend going to those. Those are going to be a phenomenal resource, as well as other skills within the Moveworks environment. So things like out-of-the-box functionalities and features, ingestion schedules, all sorts of resources. So I highly recommend visiting the documentation portal. That really should be probably your first tool in your back pocket when you're building use cases or doing anything Moveworks related. And then finally is our developer community. The developer community is sort of a forum. It's open for any kinds of questions, conversations. We post things like new feature schedules. It's a very handy resource. You can ask questions that your counterparts at other companies can answer. You can also ask questions and you'll get responses from folks like myself or internal engineers, product managers, really all sorts of personalities are in that forum. So I highly recommend visiting that as well. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and open things up to Q&A. So if you do have any questions, please, again, go ahead and ask them in the Q&A section. If you click on more in your Zoom bar, you'll see, I think you'll see a Q&A. That may just be me. If not, you should have a Q&A button that you can use to chat. So please send me your questions and we can go ahead and discuss. I'll unmute you if you have any questions you'd like to ask. Okay. Well, it looks like we're not getting any questions in currently, so I will create a community post. Speaking of community, so if you have any questions, feel free to find that community post. You can just go to community and you'll be able to search, Ariba purchase requisition approvals, and that should come up. But feel free to contact me there. We'll be able to continue any discussion we need to on community. But until next week, please have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next time.